All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to the Next Steps podcast. We are so excited to be here with you today, and we are launching a new 4-episode series to go along with our Made for More message series. And we are kicking it off today talking about knowing God after Pastor Daniel's sermon on knowing God. And if you don't know me, my name is Veronica. I'm on staff with our spiritual formation team, and I oversee our Bible study and our courses. So pretty much anything that's on our Learn page of our website is my responsibility. And sometimes that includes this podcast. And I'm joined by my good friend, Linda. Linda, thanks so much for being here. Can you introduce yourself to people?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a privilege. But I didn't know I got the big first go at it. So.
Yes, that's true. You are the first episode.
Well, here we go. So a little bit about myself. I am a Madisonian, born here, but raised in Indiana and couldn't wait to get back here. So I decided to go to grad school here, and that's where I met my husband, Mike. I was getting an MBA in marketing, and so we've been married for 35 years or so. And then we went on to stay here because who leaves Madison? And so we had 3 beautiful kids, and they went through Blackhawk and are doing well to this day. But then just recently, 2 years ago, they added 3 more kids to our family. So I've got 6 young adults out in the world doing their thing, and making their mama proud. So
yeah, that's so exciting.
Thing. So let's see. Where would you find me if you wanted to find me?
Yeah.
You would find me outside, probably hiking. I hiked Colorado last year for my 60th birthday.
Oh, so I didn't know that.
Yeah, made it to the top of the highest 14er. So that's a little fun fact for me, or of me. But I'm also out gardening. I'm hiking Rock Gibraltar up by Lodi. But part of the year I live in Florida, so you'll find me kayaking almost every day. So those are my joys, being outside. I think being raised on a farm, that kind of stuck with me. I got to be outside. So,
yeah.
Let's see. I got one more for you.
Yep.
A fun fact is I joined Blackhawk staff in 2012, and the first thing they made me do was do StrengthsFinder. And I was like, oh, what's this? Another test? But what I found out is I'm an activator, and I finally got a label for what my wiring was, and it just it made a whole lot of things make sense. So when I first found Blackhawk, they put me on the Imagine campaign, which helped start the building at Brader Way, and then that led to Madison Missions. And when the kids attending were only there were only 60 of them, so that was back in 2006. I lasted there for 5 years doing the site coordination, and then moved on to doing some parent team stuff, but then I got a tap on the shoulder to help launch Fitchburg. And that made a lot of sense once I got the activator word. And, that was a lot of fun, and look where they are today. So that's kind of cool. So
I know I get the joy of being at Fitchburg once a month, and it just is. I was not involved in the launch, but it's so fun to be there now to just see how much it's grown and what the community is like there.
Such a great family down there. Yeah, I love going back and seeing all the peeps. But there's so many I don't know, which is also exciting and growing. So but we did church in the school building for so many years, and that was it was a joy, but a lot of work. So now my other work is I'm on to being a spiritual director. So I'm in a 3-year program, about to graduate in July. It's through the Franciscan Spirituality Center up in La Crosse. So I'm looking forward to graduation, and I'm not sure how my practice will unfold, but God will direct that as it comes. So that's been a joy.
Do you get to have a graduation ceremony?
You know, everybody asks me that, and I have a feeling it's going to be a little small circle of, there's about 30 of us, and so I don't know, we'll see.
That's good, though. It's nice to just mark the occasion.
They will,
Good. Well, it's no wonder that you and I get along so well, because we do have so much in common, both being outside and our love of spiritual formation, this journey with God. But we just found out before we started recording that we both have the activator strength, and it just really is so fun. Similar energy.
So watch out, world.
Watch out for us, guys. So anyways, we are going to dive into some of the topics that Pastor Daniel talked about. And one of the things he sort of leads out with is that he starts talking about a time where he felt stuck in his relationship with God. And I think my original original question for you was, have you ever felt that way? But I think if we're honest, we've all probably felt that way at some point.
Definitely.
So maybe tell us about a time when you did feel that way.
Well, to be honest, I felt that many times before, and he's had to kind of shake me up to get me on a different route, which is great. One of them that I can give you an example of is I was doing Bible studies forever. I was in BSF, Bible Study Fellowship, which turned into, that model came over to Blackhawk to do the Blackhawk Bible Study. So I'm dating myself with that. But I was constantly doing for God and not being with God. And I think until I learned that lesson, I just felt stuck. How much more can I do? You know?
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about it as we go on. But
yeah. It is interesting how God kind of reveals those spaces to us, where we kind of get into those patterns, and that's when he invites us kind of into something new when we get stuck.
Yeah, it just reminded me when I went from Bible studies, I moved down to mission work and got to go to Honduras and Kenya through Blackhawk mission teams, and then also a Mexican trip with my family. And that was more doing. And one of the lessons I learned from that, though, is your doing has to come from an overflowing cup with Him. Otherwise, your cup's empty and you get tired.
Yeah.
So having an overflowing cup, we'll talk about as well.
Yeah.
It's a big part of where I am right now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of an overflowing cup, one of the other things Daniel talks about that was key for him is having life to the full. And you can't have life to the full if you have an empty cup. So what does it mean to you to have life to the full?
Well, there was a saying or you know how you see pictures or a meme or something out there, and one of them was make sure your cup is full so that what spills out is good and lovely. And it just reminded me that what you fill your cup with is what's going to spill out onto others.
Yeah.
So if your cup's half full, there's not going to be a lot coming out. But if your cup is overflowing, mine overflows because I spend time with God, and when I leave that time or when I move on to whatever I'm doing next in my life, I'm taking that with me. So my cup overflows with, abundant joy, love. I'm coming from that place instead of emptiness and regret or need. So it that's a good analogy to know what's coming out of you, what's in your cup.
Yeah. And I mean, you're so right, because our cups can be empty and then we're struggling where there's like a scarcity, there's emptiness, like you said, loneliness, isolation. But then our cups can also be full with other things. Like,
That's true.
They can, we talk frequently around here about how everything has the potential to form us, and it's whether it's forming us more and more in the image of Christ, or if it's forming us in the image of the world and the culture. And so if we fill our cups with things of the world and the culture, that's what's going to spill out, not our love of God and the fruits of the Spirit.
One of the great lines Daniel said was that we need to radiate joy, and maybe not need to, but we do radiate joy when we've spent time with God. And I think that's, to your point, you're radiating whatever you've been with or passing on, so to speak.
Yeah. That's a good analogy too. So we just keep talking about Daniel here and all the great things he said, but it was such a great message. So he talks about how knowing God helps us get off the treadmill of life. So what are some ways that's looked like for you?
Well, I was raised in the United Methodist Church, and one of their philosophies is doing, serving, and that was really built into me from young on. And that's why some of the mission work that I've done just felt like I needed to go and do and serve and give. But that, like we just talked about, that treadmill image, really, I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't spending time with God. I was doing for Him. So once I turned the corner or made the shift into being with God and spending time with Him, that relationship started to flower and blossom and bloom, and then you can't get enough of it once you get hooked.
Yeah.
So I guess I go back to the word relationship is what made the switch for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't have a Methodist background. I didn't grow up in the church at all. And then when I did come to Christ, I started going to a small non-denominational church. And I think that's, kind of really when my sort of spiritual formation started. But I didn't really know how to spend time with God. I felt like I felt like the way to spend time with God or to be a Christian was to do things, and that people would say things like you have to have a quiet time, something like that. And I was so nervous to do that and to try to spend time with God and to really start that relationship with him, because I was afraid I wouldn't do it right. And it was such a hurdle for me to get over, to try to like really internalize the belief that God loves me no matter what I do. He wants to be in relationship with me, because it was like, I want to do the right things for you, God, but I'm afraid you're going to find out that I'm not actually good at them.
That is so true. I think I spent, I don't want to say the majority of my life, but a lot of my life checking those boxes to make sure I had my quiet time, or to do the right Bible study, or to do the right team or service, whatever it was. But what I found out was that God cares so deeply about me intimately and wants more than that. But I think there's a place for checking some of those boxes, for getting into practice, for learning how to read your Bible, learning how to find the time to make sure you have some quiet time. But then you got to go on to that next step. And if you get stuck like on the treadmill of just checking the boxes, then that's, I think, where you do get stuck. Yeah. But I do have a big life event that happened that really unstuck me, that I should probably share. Many of you know about it. When I was at Fitchburg, we launched in March of 2013, and then in May of 2013, I found out I had breast cancer. And that set me way back, physically, mentally, emotionally, all that. But that's actually where I met God, at a really deep, intimate place where I couldn't do anymore. And he said, no, you're going to rest. You're going to heal. We're going to do this together. And so we walked a journey of from May till November, December that year, of healing and going through all of the chemos, the surgery, the radiations. And on the other side of it, and I can tell you in the middle, there were a couple points where he was all I had. And I was at the bottom, because some of those chemos take you really low emotionally. And it, people couldn't help me at that time. You know, I was it, right? There wasn't anybody that could fix what I was going through, but God did. And he was so close at that time that he said, hey, I'm here for you, and we're going to do this together. And I was like, no, I'm done. I really wanted to be done. But it was that little voice that said, no, we got this together. And walking out of it together just made all the difference, that I knew I had a friend. I knew I had a bigger mystery beyond me, and I was all in. And it took a lot of healing over the next few years to figure out, you know, what this body can do and what it can't do, but then what does he want me to do with him? And it was that close relationship that has carried me on since then. So if a big thing's coming your way, don't say no, but sometimes you can't say no, and you just have to walk through it. And there's that analogy of, you can walk around it, you can walk away from it, but the healthiest thing is to walk through it, because there's change and transformation coming your way, and it is hard, but I can say that because I'm like and it's not the last thing he'll take me through, but right now that's kind of my big part of my story. I mean, I'm so glad you shared that, because I'm sure there are people listening to this that are going through a difficult time, and it may not be cancer. It could be, you know, a disappointment in life, like a lost job, or an opportunity that you thought you had that you don't have, a friendship that is crumbling, or a marriage that has ended. I went through a similar season when I lost a parent. And it just felt like, God, I don't know how to do this, right? No one can fix this for me, like you said. No one can bring my dad back. No one can recover the time that I've lost with him. But I experienced a similar just feeling of closeness of the Lord, of just like, hey, I am not happy about this with you either, but I am with you, and I'm going to be here with you to the end. And just that, like, his knowing, like being able to feel his presence was so helpful for me. But I've also been through seasons that have been a struggle where it felt like God wasn't near. Right. And those are the ones I really had to fight for, of like, hey, God, I don't know what we're doing here, and I don't know why you feel so far away from me. But I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to keep showing up, and I'm going to hope that when we get to the other side of this, that we're both still here, and I'm going to be able to see you working
all along the way, even though I can't see it right now.
Right.
Because I think that's the hardest space to be in, when you're going through a difficult time and it feels like God's not there. But we oftentimes, I think, when we get on the other side, we can see where he was there, but we just didn't have eyes to see it in the moment. And those are the darkest times.
Right. And one of the things you can also do is be so close to God and then get back into life and get running again. And I have this habit of running fast and adding way too much to my plate. And that has happened since cancer. And I've had to pull back and say, back to what really matters.
Yeah.
And so you learn those lessons, but there's a lot of back and forth, and it's never a straight line.
Yeah.
And, again, this is my journey. Everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
But it's these are lessons from the road, so to speak. But I will say, one of the biggest things I've learned lately is I need to hold space for God and me, and actually put it on my calendar. Otherwise, so many things can come in. And right now, I do morning rendezvous, and that works for me in my life stage. But I know when I had littles around, there was no time, and I really had to figure out just even if it was a 3-minute deep breath to get back on track. So. That holding space evolves, and I've added different things, but it continues to morph.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what God does with that. But
Yeah.
if you don't show up, He can't do anything with that
what do
time.
you know?
So a lot of it's about showing up.
Yeah, and I think the way you've talked about God, our relationship with God being a relationship, is a helpful frame for that too. Of like, we can't be in a relationship with a person if we don't spend time with them, or we don't make space for them. We don't hold that space for them and show up. And the same is true with God. We can't be in relationship with Him unless we make that space. And you're totally right. Some seasons, I remember when we had twins during the COVID pandemic. Like, we were in lockdown, stay at home, and life just felt so out of control. And even though I had all the time in the world, because I was literally at home all the time, it felt like I had no space, because I was just in this endless loop of like feeding babies and putting them to sleep, and then trying to like figure out what needed to be done in the house. My rhythm with God at that time was that anytime I would fill my water cup or my coffee cup, I would just take a deep breath and ask the Lord to fill me with the Spirit. And that's the only time I got with God during that, like, probably, 6 months to a year. But that was enough, and that worked during that time. And like you said, now, obviously, my twins are 5, my youngest is 3. There's a lot more space in my days. Still not always as much space as I would like, right. But more than enough to fill my water cup. And it's changed over time, but it's been important to prioritize that and to make that space in all of those seasons, no matter how it looks.
Oh, for sure. Yes. One other point about a relationship is that there's a back and forth. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things when I was thinking about what I would talk about was I get love nuggets from God all the time, and I don't want to. I don't know if you want to call them something else.
I love it, honestly. I think I'm going to start using the term love nugget now.
Well, love bombs, whatever. They're also just little whispers. Mm-hmm. But it's and I used to start. Well, I tried to write some of them down, but they kind of happen all the time now. That not that I'm used to them, but I don't take the time to write them down. And I really should. But a relationship goes back and forth. So I give time to him. But he also shows up in so many different ways that the other day I chuckled to myself. I'm like, oh, there you are again. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just did that for me. Or I run into this or that. And it happens with circumstances or people or timing. Or I will cross a passage in a book or even a scripture that just hits me at the right time in the right way. And so I do hear back from him, because that's been some of the questions people have asked me. It's like, well, he's invisible. How are you gonna? I think, but that's happening now. I think in the past, when I was younger or when I was running even faster, I didn't take the time to look. But now I see him everywhere in everything, and it's kind of like I can't not see him anymore. But that's where I am on my journey, and I want to stay there. Right?
And I think that taking the time not only to see and acknowledge them, but to attribute them to God, and not just like, oh, this is a funny coincidence or something, I think that was probably my habit when I was younger of just like, oh, funny, interesting how that happened. But now being able to see like, no, I asked God for something and he is responding, or God knows the desires of my heart and he's seeing this and he's putting this in my path, or he knows that I'm worried about this thing and I'm kind of ruminating on it. And he led me to this book for this reason or something. And I don't know that we need to like over spiritualize everything, but I do think that you're right. I think God shows up in ways when we do take the time to stop and look for it, or when we take the time to stop and ask him to. I think there have been times where I felt like, oh no, this is too small to ask God for. Like I'll ask him for the big things of like, God, give us wisdom as we're making a decision about where Dean should go to grad school, when we were thinking about that for him, stuff like that. But a couple months ago, I was feeling really discouraged. I was really down, and I just said, God, I need some encouragement, and I need it to come from a source I don't expect, because like I know my husband's going to encourage me because he loves me. I know my supervisor is going to encourage me because she thinks I'm doing a good job. And my friends will encourage me to the ends of the earth. But I need it to come from somewhere unexpected, because I just need to know that you're seeing me in this. And it felt like such a like silly or small thing to ask for. And man, if he didn't provide within 30 minutes, and it was just incredible. And then to be able to go back and say, thank you, God, you saw me, I appreciate you, so
you're getting those love notes.
Yeah, exactly.
And to acknowledge where it came from is fabulous, because that builds the relationship and makes it stronger. Yeah. Just like our human ones.
Yeah.
Oh, such good stuff.
I know. I feel like we could talk about this all day. So we're going to move on to the next question. Yes. So Daniel talked about how sometimes our relationship, in particular his relationship, was motivated by fear. But then he also talks about wanting to earn God's approval or be right or find the truth. What's been kind of true in your experience about your relationship with God? You talked a little bit about doing. Maybe you can say more about that.
Yeah, and that's probably my early training in the Methodist Church was serving, and it felt like the right thing to do. And there were a lot of times when I got joy out of serving. Yeah. And I can't say anything bad about that, but if you overdo and you're not taking care of yourself, because I had a habit of doing for others before me, and had to learn the hard lesson of, oh no, you need to take care of your, it's kind of like the oxygen mask drops down, and you need to take it first before you care for others. So, I had my priorities rearranged, especially with cancer. It's like, come on, take care of yourself. Yeah. Not that I caused it, but anyway, that's part of that journey. But I'd say the other part was checking the right boxes. Was I on the right path? I've always been very curious about Christianity, about God, and who he really is, how big he is. So I have continued that curiosity to this day. It hasn't really stopped my relationship, but it has... it's built it, so to speak. So, that's, I guess how being motivated by fear hasn't really been a part of my story. But I'm so glad Daniel shared it, because I think that comes in certain subcultures around the United States. So it's good to address all that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how God sees those things in each of us. He sees the people that are fearful, and he comes alongside them. He sees the people that want to know the truth. They want to know that they're right, and he comes alongside them. And he sees you and your intention and your love to do and serve people, and he comes alongside you too. So
that's the crazy part, is we all have such a different journey, and what I'm going through and choosing to work through or use as my tools for getting closer to God will not work for others the way it's working for me. So I remember trying to find the right formula, right? And if I do this, and this, I will get there. And there is no right formula. Yeah. Just like relationships, all relationships are different depending on who's in them. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think John Mark Comer talks about this, that he talks about the things that most form us in our spirituality is reading the Bible, praying, and suffering. And I was like, yeah, but beyond those three, and how you do those three things, it varies so much, right? Like there's just so much variety. I can think even just in my own household, that my spiritual journey has been so different from my husband's. And there are a lot of ways that we're really similar too, that we're wired similarly and that God interacts with us similarly. We're both readers, so we like to read and listen to podcasts and stuff like that, and, we come to church on Sundays, but then there's a lot of ways where our paths have varied, and just the ways that he honors who we are in that is really lovely too.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, I got another John Mark Comer quote here.
Bring it.
Just really, we're co-sponsored by John Mark Comer apparently today. John Mark Comer says that if we want to experience the life of Jesus, we have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. So how have you adopted Jesus's lifestyle in your life?
So it quickly goes back to Psalm 46:10 about being still and know God. And I guess I thought that was more like a Hallmark card.
It does show up on a lot of walls and in a lot of cards. So,
but it reminded me that he was still before God. He went early in the morning, late at night, to the mountain to pray. He took time with his disciples. He was slow in many things, maybe not tipping over the tables at the temple, but he seemed to have a very calm rhythm to him. And so as you read the Gospels, of course you want to be like him, but I think we don't always pick out the slow part, because that's not our society, and that's definitely not my personality. Being an extrovert, I'm go, well, activator, there we go. So I think that was the biggest thing that I had to learn, is how to slow down, how to breathe deeply, and actually be present, because I'm also an Enneagram 7 that wants to be in the future, and I'm planning things out. I got places to go, I got adventure to go find, but I have really worked hard to be in the moment, but that's taken time, and be present with people, and sit with them, and sit with God, I guess, is where the line we're kind of talking about. But I do have a list of tools that work for me.
Yeah,
if you want me to
tell me more.
Some of those. So silence is probably my first one I'll bring up, because I'm not a silent person. I'm ready to talk whenever you are. So, but I try to have rendezvous with God every morning with my coffee, and it's I don't always have something in front of me. Sometimes it's scripture or a book or whatever, but most of the time it's just I just need some silence. But silence I go back to a lot when my mind's running too fast, and that has been lovely. And then there's some rhythms of breathing that I do with that helps.
Have you done it like an extended time of silence before?
I was asked on my spiritual direction class work to do 6 days of silence.
6 days.
So I can technically say I did that. We did talk to our spiritual director for a half hour each day. Yeah. So I did get to talk a little bit, but things come up in the silence.
They sure do, yeah.
And especially when that long a silence. So I highly recommend it, but I'd recommend taking small bites before you go for 6 days.
Yeah, I agree. I've only done maybe probably 48 hours, maybe a little more, but I think it's probably 48 hours is the most I've done on my own. And you definitely have to build your tolerance up for that. I think my first retreat day that I took in silence was like 3 hours. And I told myself I had to get through those 3 hours, and then I could do whatever I wanted after that. But that's how I was too nervous that I had to go for a whole day and have some grandiose experience with God or something. And so I told myself okay, you can do this for 3 hours, Veronica. You can do that. It's possible. And then, slowly built up over time. But I have a good friend who goes every year for 2 weeks. And I'm not there yet, but she is.
Well, and everybody's different in their journey. It's not.
She is also older than me, so she's had more time.
Right. It's not a pinnacle to reach. He is trying to reach out to us. And if we don't be quiet in front of him, then it's tough to get a message across.
Yeah.
And, clear the brain of all our thoughts. I love the neuroscience that goes with all that, but we can get into that.
We'll get into that. So, because I interrupted your list, so you should keep going.
Journaling became a big one after cancer, because there's where you can journal for 20 minutes and get all the yuck out of your head first thing in the morning. It's from a book called The Artist's Way, but that type of journaling turned into some of my morning practice, where if I've got something I just can't get out of my head, I'll put it on paper, and then it kind of goes away. I at least have it written down. So, but I have noticed when I'm going through decisions or just some crazy life events, if I journal, interesting things will pop out that will come out of actually handwriting that wouldn't come out if I was just sitting quietly. So that's been a good one for me. Another one is nature. Like I said, you'll see me outside. Some of my retreats when I was in high school, we did one where you had to take a piece of nature, look at it for a half hour, which for a high school student, that was a really hard
that feels brutal, yeah.
But it made me curious how this world is put together.
Yeah.
And, I also had an undergrad in nutrition, and so for the physical human body to work, all these pieces have to come. So I've been in awe of what God's design is for many years. So I continue to follow that. So scripture for me it's more lectio, where I sit and ponder it and wait for something to shimmer. And it's in the waiting that I'm always fascinated about what word will pop up. So that's been good. I will say I'm my program made me an avid reader spiritually. But now, since my program's almost over, I can start to go through my pile that has been waiting. Yeah. But podcasts are always interesting to me too. So I do driving to when I drive to my parents, it's 8 hours, so I can get in a lot of podcasts. Yeah. So that's good. I will say, welcoming prayer is not something we've talked that much about here at Blackhawk. It comes out of the centering prayer where you're quiet for 20 minutes. One of the women that helped get that prayer going, she developed another prayer called welcoming prayer, and it's something that really helped me with my ego, and that's something else we can talk about someday, but it really helped me let go. You kind of welcome whatever's going on in front of you and then you say, hi, how are you? I don't need you today, and then you walk it out the back door. So you acknowledge it, but then you let it go, and you just rest in him and let him take care of it. And that, I think, really helped me turn a corner after cancer when big things were coming at me. Then my last one is my tribe. Everybody's got to have a tribe, and that can be an accountability partner, it can be a best friend, it can be your spouse. But I also have a big circle of women that got me through cancer, and they continue to be there for me when I need my tribe. And I wish that on anybody and everybody, that they can have some people to journey with and do life with. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's hard. It's especially hard to be in a new space and not have those people, not have those relationships. I think, my husband and I moved around a little bit while he was in grad school, and then we're not originally from Madison, so this was a new community for us too. And I remember one time we were moving overseas for a year while he was doing his research for his PhD, and one of my very good friends said, "I'm going to pray that you meet one good friend. That's all you need. You can get through a lot with one good friend." And so she just fervently prayed that for me. And I think knowing that I had friends back in the U.S. that I could still, connect with and talk to, but that she was really fervently praying for that one good friend who did show up eventually.
So tell us. Yes.
Yes, my husband was at the university one day in Jerusalem, and he heard someone with a Southern accent talking about Jesus. And he was like, okay, someone from the U.S. talking about Jesus. I guess I better go talk to them. And which is so out of character for my very introverted husband. But he knew we were desperate to make friends. And then he came home that day, and he had met two gentlemen. And he came home that day and he said, "I met a guy today, Veronica." And I was like, "Great, good for you." And he was like, "And he's got a wife." And I remember being a little salty about it, a little skeptical of like, "Great, he's got a wife. Cool. I don't know that. Like, what is she to me? Like, how do I know that I'm going to get along with her? She could just be some random person, And it turned out that she became my very good friend while we were there, and we did a lot of life together that year, and I was so grateful. So, but yes, it feels so hard sometimes until you find that one good friend. But my encouragement would be, if you don't have a tribe, if you just keep praying for it.
Definitely. Well, I've been here for 30 some years, so that's why tribes continue to circulate. So.
But it does transition too. I don't know if you found that. Like, I felt like I had friends, and I still have many of them when we first moved to Madison. But then when we started having kids and things like that, a lot of our friends had older kids than ours. It took us a long time to have our kids. So then we felt like we lost touch with some of our friends because they were in a completely different life stage than we were in. We had littles, and they had like middle schoolers, And so it's like your friendships, and your tribe can evolve over time too.
Definitely. And I will say that now that I'm in my early 60s, with retirement around in different ages and stages of the people around me, that they go different places. And we also have a place in Florida where I've had to make some friends. Yeah. It was fairly easy, but there's a lot of dynamic with losing the ones from behind, and So I hold them all loosely, and I'm a connector, so I don't lose. I try not to lose too many, but that's. But God really uses whoever's in your life. It doesn't have to be your total tribe. It can just be one person.
Oh, that's a good encouragement.
Somebody to walk arm in arm with. And I will say, if you don't have a tribe right now, a spiritual director is a great person to go talk through some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but we can talk about that in a minute. I did want to mention. Daniel mentioned fasting.
Yes.
That's not one that I've had to that I've jumped into that much. But boy, I think of all the social media fasting that could benefit us beyond the food and the other things. But on my way here, I was driving and watching a dog look at a person he was walking his dog, but he's looking at his phone and the dog's looking at him. And it's like, oh, dude, you're missing this moment. You've got this precious dog looking at you and you're on your phone.
Yeah.
There's so many of those visuals that I see every day.
Yeah.
And I think of, God's looking at us, but we're looking at our phone.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to run with that, but that's fine. It's funny when that one bugs me.
Yeah.
Because I do the same thing, right? It's just like,
yeah, we all do.
Yeah. But I did want to get to the point where we talked about shape a little bit. Because, I think it's important to know what your shape is so that you know how to find what works for you in your relationship with God. I haven't done the whole thing yet because it is 45 minutes. Thank you very much.
It is. You can start it and save it and then go back. Yeah, so that part is helpful. It helped me because I was like, 45 minutes, so jeez. But you can kind of start and stop.
Right. So I'll put in a plug for that because when I did my Enneagram work and when I did the Strengths Finder, it just helps to see yourself with different eyes and label some of the things that you take as normal, but then they also help you transform and transition to other parts of you that you didn't know you had and could develop and that kind of thing. So I'm excited you guys put that all together.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited. Tiffany mentioned the whole staff team has done theirs, and our spiritual formation team is going to be talking about ours together soon, and I'm really excited to hear that. Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
The other quick thing I want to mention is on the Black Hawk podcast, the Next Steps, there's a couple of there's many great podcasts. If you want to know more about the Examine, I think Alicia and Adam did one in 2020. And then there was one about speed bumps with Heather Watts. So exploring what Black Hawk has already put out there in the world will help you, find your journey, your road, your togetherness, your relationship with him even more. Again, it's all a journey and it's all personal, but if we don't start moving toward it, then it's just going to stagnate.
Yeah.
So,
and we're never done either. It just keeps going.
No, you got my last line.
Sorry. I stole it from you.
I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to be here today, to be 60 and in this place and healthy. Because when you have those speed bumps in life, it's a great reminder of just being grateful.
Yeah.
And that gratefulness takes you into joy that he's part of I'm a part of his journey, God's plan, God's whatever. And I'm letting life unfold now and not planning it all out. So that's a good place for me to be. Yeah, good. Well, all right. Any other last lines before we go? I feel like we could talk forever and ever. So, well, I did want to say at the very end what a spiritual director is. Yes, please. People don't know what that is, and since I'm graduating in July, it's pretty top of mind for me right now. I've defined it as companioning others. So, the spiritual director it comes a lot from the Catholic world, and it's also very it's common language that people use. But I think spiritual companion or spiritual guide, you're just walking with them. So my job is to listen together for the sacred thread that's running through their lives. There's always a story under the story, and that's where the Spirit's at. And sometimes it takes a good listener or a holding presence to have that story come out. And so I'm excited to see where that journey will go, but I just want to make sure people knew what that was. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. We also, if anybody is listening and interested, we've got a list of spiritual directors that we recommend and we partner with that we can recommend. If people have questions or want to talk to a spiritual director, you can reach out to us on our Contact Us page on the website or to any staff member that you know. So, all right.
Thank you so much for being here, Linda. I know this was your first time on the podcast, and I was so happy to have you. So thank you.
It's been great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. All right, friends, we will see you next time. We've got another episode coming up about knowing yourself, and we will talk to you then. Bye.